you can't scroll through TikTok without seeing people burning their Balenciaga clothing and shoes. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's all over my feed. It's insane.
My TikTok is incredibly down market because no one has burned one Balenciaga thing. I just get like how to make stews out of leftovers. So I think economically we have a real distribution going here.
Welcome to Punchy by Rival, where we take the gloves off to share the hard-hitting realities of the challenger marketing world. Each week, we'll break down the buzz and cut through the BS of the top stories and trends to tell you what you really need to know and do differently to grow your brand and career. All right, we are live. Did I miss the intro?
There was no
Real?
intro. The intro was just everyone staring at their phones.
Great. Well, that's how we're starting this episode. And apparently, today is just the I don't know, Murphy's Law of Thursdays. My flight to Copenhagen got canceled, so I'm here in London, but I can't access my office because someone's doing work in there. So I'm in my daughter's bedroom trying to put up the background because we're actually doing renovations and moving a bunch of stuff around. And now somebody started drilling in the background, and I didn't know that there was an intro. There was no intro this time. So there you go. It can only get better from here. Chad, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Excited to chat all things marketing as always. This will be our third date now. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I know we really had to, build up your confidence, really encourage you to share your own opinions because I know that's something that's tricky for you. So it was tough, considering you. Actually, to be honest, joking aside, you were one of the first people I thought of. I can't remember if you were one of the first people I reached out to, but for this show, just knowing how good and strong your opinions are on the marketing industry. So I'll give a quick intro and then we'll get into the show. So Chad West is the VP of marketing at Argent, a crypto startup focused on bringing low fees and bulletproof security to Ethereum. Previously, he was the director of global marketing and comms at fintech unicorn Revolut, where he led the business through the rapid growth years. He also spent time at Rocket Internet. And I think it's fair to say he's one of the best startup marketers out there and certainly has the best Scottish accent in the startup marketing scene. And then, of course, everybody knows Jenna and Dubose. No introduction needed there. Let's get into the show, shall we? So we got three stories to talk about today. We're going to start with Chad's, which should be interesting. So if you're in the marketing world, if you're in the advertising industry, you have certainly seen the news about Balenciaga and their ad that got them into a little bit of trouble. And I just have no idea how this happened. So from The Guardian, although we could have pulled this from a bunch of different outlets, Balenciaga apologizes for ads featuring bondage bears and child abuse papers. Balenciaga have landed themselves in hot water, not because of really strange runway shows, but because of a campaign which included imagery of children holding BDSM teddy bears. The brand admitted a series of grievous errors for which Balenciaga takes responsibility. They've withdrawn the campaign, but they've also filed a lawsuit. I believe it was against the production agency. So, Chad, what is going on here? Is this another PepsiCo, Kylie Jenner type of situation, or what have you got to say about it?
So for me, this comes in 2 points, right? The first one is just the campaign itself. It wasn't one, it was twice, right? So the first time you see kids wearing, holding these teddy bears dressed in bondage gear, that's controversial enough in its own. I think it's sort of borderline sexualizing children. And you'd maybe give them the benefit of the doubt and say, do you know what? There are controversial brands. Okay, they fessed up to it. But then there's the second aspect where there's prop paperwork used that's, essentially trying to defend the idea of children being sexualized. There's a book on the shelf of some guy who used to his works of painting naked toddlers. It all just started to dot up that this wasn't just an accident or one little risky thing. There was a whole storybook going on of this, and you can't scroll through TikTok without seeing people burning their Balenciaga clothing and shoes. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's all over my feed. It's insane. So and part of me, when I looked at their response, I was thinking, "Do you know what? Maybe they did just fuck up. Maybe, they're apologetic about it." But if you look at Balenciaga's history, and this is rich coming from me because I'm a controversial kind of marketing guy, right? I I draw the line at sexualizing children, though. But they've done a lot of shit like this in the past. If you look at the fashion week, I think they maybe did in Paris during the Ukraine war. They dressed up their models as refugees trailing through the snow, and So there's always just this kind of tone deaf. And I know we brand it under, oh, it's art, it's expression, all this sort of la-di-da nonsense that you see on college campuses and whatnot. But for me, it was just, it's a pattern of all this nonsense continuing. And the second point is a massive company like them and no internal controls. Like, oh, and there was no oversight. Like, surely there must be the creative director, legal, the PR and comms team. I'm not buying for a second. Brand is everything in fashion. They will have clear processes. So part of me questions the sincerity of the apology and the lack of oversight, or this was something edgy they wanted to do and it's flipped back around and hit them.
Probably that, right? I mean, it doesn't go through because again, the Kylie Jenner PepsiCo ad from what was that a couple years ago? That just seems like there was probably nobody with any kind of diverse perspective on what they were doing. I don't think it takes too much to have a diverse perspective on like children and BDSM. So it must have just been that they thought they were pushing the line in a way that would, cause some buzz, but not have this much negative backlash. But Dubose, what do you think about this?
I mean, I've got a few thoughts. I think the biggest one for me is the idea that I think we probably shouldn't mistake intent where negligence will do. I think it's down to the idea that I think large organizations, we tend to attribute quite a lot of quality controls and thought to, where actually, especially in sectors like fashion, it's a pretty monolithic kind of quality control mechanism. Creative directors wield disproportionate amounts of power in most fashion brands. And at a certain point, you can either chalk that up to one or a few people's bad idea, or more likely, probably just really, really bad vetting of production houses, of kind of an idea that snuck into a wider campaign. So I think, the thing for me on this one, I think the apology is insane, because if you turn around and sue your production house 5 minutes later after you say, I take all responsibility for this, you clearly have not taken all responsibility for this. And I think, as far as the edginess goes, I think it's interesting is that there's tone deaf and then there's just pure insanity. And I think once you get into kind of the pure insanity point, it's probably more likely that someone's kind of just not checked right where things are. And in the current climate, in kind of current conversations, especially in the US around things like Pizzagate, things like this get connected in a way on the internet in a way where they might not have previously. I think as far as the idea of kind of bondage gear and kind of kids, you go. I think Hasbro and GI Joe and the way they dress costumes in the '80s probably need to have a word as well. So I think there is that idea that at a certain point, this is probably just a lot of failures along quality control, not kind of an insidious plot to kind of create edgy BDSM content and get the internet talking. Also, my TikTok is incredibly down market because no one has burned one Balenciaga thing. I just get like how to make stews out of leftovers. So I think economically we have a real distribution going here.
Jenna, you looked like you had some hands you wanted to throw.
I just really objected to Dubo saying like, well, like this could be connected to the Pizzagate. Yeah, obviously every brand has to anticipate how a crazy cult of conspiracy theorists could possibly connect their brand campaigns to just complete. Anyway, that was what I was throwing hands on.
You're gonna end on Pizzagate. You're just gonna that's the mic drop.
I do not feel as strongly about that. I do not feel as strongly outraged about this as I think most people do. Yeah, it's in poor taste, and I don't think that I think that there's two separate things. I think that the campaign with the BDSM bears is an obvious. Why would you do that? What egregious oversight, negligence, or like really bad decision went into that? Shouldn't have done it. Thumbs down. The controversy about the this headline calling this quote child abuse papers when the fine print of a single legal document featured underneath a bag was referencing a free speech case about whether or not simulated images of child abuse regulations against simulated images of child abuse violate the First Amendment is not child abuse papers. And I kind of object to this characterization of that, like this is like rampant, like wild, like sexual abuse. Should they have done this? Probably not. But in a campaign that featured a very adult Nicole Kidman referencing again, a speech that concerns artistic expression and the First Amendment, You know, the kinds of things that you may hear on college campuses or from liberal hippie enclaves in Brooklyn, where I live. I think this is blown out of proportion. Balenciaga is a controversial brand. I don't care about this much. I think Kim Kardashian is a way fucking worse representation of this brand than either of these campaigns, to be very honest with you.
And I think the worst bit is when you read the headline Balenciaga Bondage Bears, there are definitely some people who could have been employed that fit that title way better. So I just feel bad for the folks who put the time in, and then they're not really getting to benefit from this.
Chad, any final thoughts on your article before we move on?
Yeah, I think the only thing I heard, look, I'm not a parent yet. I'm holding off as long as I possibly can. And maybe I kind of sympathize. I didn't look at it and be absolutely outraged, but I have lots of friends who are, and it was circulating around the WhatsApp groups and all the rest of it. But then again, most of them are Karens, so don't take into that too much. But I think the other one is we're in a bit of an epidemic at the minute where you'll know this, Eric, from living in the UK, that the government is spending huge time and resources protecting children online. There's been loads of situations going on at present, young kids, taking their lives amongst other things, and sites like OnlyFans and Snapchat have been big parts of that. So I think there's a lot of people here equally just pushing that narrative as a whole, is in terms of it being tone deaf of when these situations are kind of becoming rampant here in the UK. Is that the kind of content that brands should be putting out there? So yeah, I think good diverse pool of opinions there. Yeah.
Great. All right. I've decided to not award points in today's episode, and instead everybody's going to get a rant and a rave at the end. Nice. Breaking the rules, making new rules, because I want to hear what y'all have to say. All right. Second article. I saw this one and got real angry, so I'm glad that you picked it up, Jenna. Keurig Dr. Pepper demands 360-day payment terms from its agency. So Keurig Dr. Pepper completed a US PR review of its water, tea, and juice portfolio this week. After kicking off the RFP process on October 3rd, the brand is facing scrutiny for stipulating the pitching agencies either agree to exceptional 360-day payment terms or obtain financing from a third-party bank. I have a lot of thoughts on this one, but we'll start with you, Jenna.
Yeah, I honestly am more outraged by this than the Balenciaga campaign by like an order of magnitudes. Order of magnitudes. I feel that there's significantly more demonstrable harm from this one. In any case, I don't know. I don't think that I have anything particularly original to say on this that probably is not being said by the comment section of every single person who's posted this on LinkedIn. But it is an egregious and ridiculous problem. I was, I guess, less incensed by the payment terms, but rather the specificity of the RFP, which is actually, there are screenshots of it in this article. You can actually see what it was that they tell you, oh, well, you can obtain financing by essentially selling your debt to our financing partner, that they know that this is such an egregiously bad thing to do, that they already tell you that they've made the arrangement for this. And that's the only option. This is malice aforethought, which is why I have a much bigger problem for this. Again, I'm usually with Dubose on the never attribute to malice what could adequately be explained by stupidity. This cannot adequately be explained by stupidity. Clearly somebody went out with this to be intentionally awful. Best of luck to whatever unfortunate souls have to deal with this relationship. I'm sure it will be fucking miserable.
Chad?
I mean, I'd probably start by just saying that Dr. Pepper tastes like piss anyway. So, yeah.
Whoa. All right.
I feel like
that's
someone had to state the obvious, right?
I can't believe I didn't peg you as a Mr. Pibb fan. So, I mean,
this is an Iron Brew household only. But look, for me, it's insane. Look, I've never been someone who uses many agencies. It's not really been my forte. I like to build internally, but just from all my contacts in the industry, they just are constantly getting blows and knocks, right? And I feel, and this is just another one to add to the sort of sticker book. But I was looking online, revenues of $11 billion, and I was trying to sit there and be like, wait, what's the logic as to why they can't pay until the end of the year? I couldn't quite grasp that. And when I was looking for their rebuttal or their comment, I still don't think they've done that, right? So absolutely insane. If there's, more importantly, what do they expect these agencies to do? Hire a bunch of people, pay their wages, pay their partners, somehow scrape together the money, and then hope that they're going to get paid on time at the end of the year. So I don't have anything particularly original to say either, but I'd be pretty disappointed if someone will, as Jenna said, right, someone will take them up on this, and some sucker will sadly hope that. What I just hope is this doesn't set a precedent, that they get a little bit of bad PR, it's swept under the carpet, and then more companies think, oh, we can do it now. That would be a shitty thing to happen.
Yeah, and I think to your point of why do they need to do this? They don't need to do this, but they can do this. And that's always been my thing with this is even I remember when 90-day payment terms came in with some of the clients that we worked with at Vayner, and like that was kind of pushing the envelope because originally it was 30 and then it was 60 and then 90, and 90 never really became the norm. And to be fair, there were some businesses that kind of did the right thing and kept 30-day payment terms even as that bar kept getting raised. But I've always been curious why there isn't some type of there probably is, trade organizations and things like that. Like, why isn't there kind of like the union of agencies that just tries to put a stop to this? Because it's ridiculous. It's the biggest companies in the world essentially asking small businesses for the most part to be their banks. Dubose?
First off, I think we should probably call the IPA and apologize at this point, or at least tell them they need to do a better job of marketing themselves as a trade organization. Well, to that point, they've got an embassy, Eric. It's in London. It's next to actual country embassies, and then the flag says IPA. So,
No, it doesn't. True? Is that a real thing? There's not an advertising embassy.
It's like if Ecuador was only agencies. But I don't think they get police guards, but otherwise.
But I mean, like, it's not working if one of the biggest CPG brands is able to put 360-day payment terms in place, right?
Well, we don't know. We don't know who took the tender. We don't know who took it.
Fine, but my point is, like, SAG in the US, if you want to hire anybody to do live action commercials, it goes through SAG, and they have specific terms about how, like, it's non-negotiable. Whereas over here, I feel like some agencies are part of IPA or whatever other organization. Some brands are as well, but then even very big companies can still kind of do what they want. But sorry, I cut you off, Dubose.
No worries. I mean, I think to that point, right? There's definitely a game theory, someone will accept it so we can do it, element of eroding kind of collective bargaining amongst agencies. But I think, the bigger point here is, yes, you can do it, but should you? I mean, there's the moral point of, okay, it's a partnership. Let's not be dicks to each other. But then there's the functional partnership element of this, which is really hard to get PR responses from agencies that have gone out of business. So at a certain point, kind of withholding the money for that long may be really, really nice for a little more interest on the balance sheet, but is really terrible when every one of your partners goes out of business while trying to figure out the new way to drive people to Fansville. So I spent too much time in the States. If Dr. Pepper Fansville is the only thing I can remember now. But I think overall, this is rubbish. It's one of those things where, there has to be common respect between partners to make decent work. And at the end of the day, if you make shit payment terms, you're probably going to get shit output, even from great agencies that will staff it in a way where they know what you think of them. So they'll start treating you similarly.
Or, I mean, I guess as the alternative, do you just build in like an extra 25% margin into your fee and be like, I don't know, this is the time value of money. You have to pay us a lot more. Get like, I don't know. Because I'm sure that there was the negotiation part of this, which is also the real kicker. I feel like that you get eroded on your margins in negotiation.
I mean, I think that's the thing, right? At the end of the day, the real problem here is probably, are 365-day payment terms just a way to make 90-day payment terms seem nice? Like, do you just negotiate down and go, okay, the thing that we used to think was terrible has now been drug into the norm. So
the anchoring effect, there it is.
Huge. That's not, anchoring effect doesn't exist in Dr. Pepper Fansville. So it's just,
which is a shame. I really like Diet Dr. Pepper is like my go-to, like a Diet Dr. Pepper and a pastrami sandwich is like the first thing I get when I come back to Brooklyn.
No, this is a Mr. Pibb household. I'm not even in a house that I own right now, but this is a Mr. Pibb household.
Because you're south of the Mason-Dixon line, Dubose. That's why.
Exactly. For everyone who hasn't come across Mr. Pibb, please look at it. The logo looks like a child drew what he thought Dr. Pepper looked like. So it's pretty great.
All right. Dr. Pepper is amazing. I've never tried Iron Brew, actually, but I know I need to. I've lived in this country for 8 years. Yeah, so
you gotta get the full sugar one though. The new one is a little weird.
I don't do full sugar, Jenna.
You're gonna have to suffer through it.
Diet zero.
No.
I want to see what happens as a medical study, because you don't eat sugar. So if you have a full fat Iron Brew, it's going to be an exciting few hours for you, mate.
We have a theory which drink a full fat iron brew and puts hairs in your chest. So it's when you're sick, drink an iron brew. It was all your fucking grandmother would always leave a bottle of it in the cupboard, so it would get warm and stale as shit, and then they pour it in a glass and be like, "Look, drink this if you're sick." One time I had toothache. My gran put Dr. Pepper on a fucking tablecloth and told me to stick it on my tooth. Sugar on my tooth.
Isn't that
So
the problem and solution has come together on your tooth?
I don't know, but yeah, it's a religious, it's a protected entity in Scotland. You don't drink anything bar. I think, in fact, Scotland's the only country in the world where a Coca-Cola selling brand is not the #1 soft drink in the country.
Huh. Had no idea. All right. On that note, so we've gone from sugary drinks. We're going to get into fast food. And I apologize. There's a bit of a delay for me on the video. So if this is messing up my audio, just shout. But Dubose, your story for this week is from Adweek. Burger King campaign debates the best burger. And that's kind of the story, isn't it? Burger King's new French spot invites diners to a discourse on the greatest burger of them all. Debating the best burger is a great Western pastime, apparently. I don't know. I haven't come across that before. I've debated a couple burgers, but I'm not sure I'd call it a pastime. They ran the spot for the first time during the France versus Denmark game. Is this Burger King's Pepsi versus Coke moment, Dubose?
So, I mean, I think there's a few things here. I think, you will notice throughout my description of this story, this occurred in France. I tend to try to pronounce that as France, which makes me seem very pretentious, but otherwise I sound very American when I say France. The reason why I think this is an interesting story is twofold. I think it's intriguing. This is done by Buzzman in France, which has done some really great work. But I think one of the things that's quite interesting there is the view that everyone in the West is debating the best burger as if we're all Kevin James in a recreation of the School of Athens is probably quite an interesting cultural view overall. Yes, Kevin James from the King of Queens, Jenna, that Kevin James. That image isn't going away now. But secondly, I think it's interesting because I think there is something here about talking about your competition. I think, one of the things this always strikes me as this is like the Coke versus Pepsi challenge. At the end of the day, if you're Pepsi, you don't have to win. You just have to be mentioned in the same consideration set. And I think, apologies to the good people at Burger King. It is not my first choice when it comes to burgers, even though burger is in the name. It's kind of the lead element. I mean, it's not Burger King. It's probably more of a Burger Duchy at best. But I think at the end of the day there, I think it's interesting because by curating that discussion, you start to at least get, a consideration set going that anchors it against McDonald's, Five Guys, others. And I think that shows a lot of brand bravery. I think, I always use the example of like Dos Equis in the Most Interesting Man in the World campaign. Because at the end of it, he kind of goes like, I don't always drink beer, but when I do, it's Dos Equis. And I think a dose of realism that consumers aren't monolithic in how they think about brands or sectors is really, really powerful. And I think opening that up to kind of go, hey, we know you're going to eat other places. Not everyone is just, lining up for Burger King, I think is an interesting way to get people to think about the brand slightly differently.
Taco Bell is your favorite burger joint. I know that for a fact. Also, Dos Equis.
Taco is my favorite burger.
Dos Equis?
Dos Equis.
Dos Equis in France. Okay.
You have a 500-day streak on Duolingo in Spanish, and you say Dos Equis. 500 days on Duolingo in Spanish, and that's what I got you? Okay.
Yo no aprendo mucho español.
I do think it's a little bit rich that we're all sitting here making fun of these guys as though this is a great Western pastime when I've worked with you both for what, like 6 years? We're on 6 years now. And I literally cannot count how many times we've had the is a taco a sandwich or is a hot dog a sandwich or like whatever, like debate. So I just don't think that we have a lot of moral high ground.
It is.
Yeah, okay, all right. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I like I say, I watched it. It's a good ad. It's always a little funny to me watching fast food joints try to talk about like the quality or I mean, like the enjoyment factor or like, who really likes their food. Like in France, when I just feel that like kind of one of the French national pastime is probably shitting on fast food or like American food generally. So it seems like a little bit of a weird choice, but I'm not a French creative agency, so I don't really know that much about it. But I don't know, like I do think it's a little weird though that like, and because they got the creative director or whoever the head of marketing, I can't remember who the guy's name, Julian in this, who's quoted as like, yeah, like let's face it, people don't just eat a Burger King or like whatever. I'm like, is this really such a groundbreaking truth? Like, I thought that like the reality that brands live or die on like light buyers in these categories, I feel like has been like accepted conventional marketing wisdom for a really long time. I wasn't struck by the overwhelming originality of this idea. It was okay. But I don't know, like this, I worry it's gonna be like another one of those, like the Burger King, like the moldy burgers where it's gonna be really awarded, and then Burger King continues to lag in the rankings because their burgers are terrible. All of their advertising should be about their chicken fries, which is the best thing on the Burger King menu, is the chicken fries.
I do think there's something interesting you mentioned there, Jen, which look, it's not original, but it is needed, given the fact that we've all dealt with clients before that treat their competition as if they're in some kind of holy crusade to convert people to only drink one type of soft drink
That's
or
true.
use one
That's true.
type of insurance product. And at the end of the day, I think at least acknowledging that people may at some point deviate from the one true fast food path and walk across the street to Wendy's is probably a pretty useful, relevant message.
Chad, what have you got to say?
So I'll start off. I used to follow the chief marketing officer at Burger King on LinkedIn, and I used to see the crazy expensive shit he used to do. And I couldn't help but think that, man, if you took 15% of this guy's budget, their burgers wouldn't taste like you're chewing on a fucking eraser. You know, buy some good go to Scotland, buy a field, put some fucking Angus cows in there, job done, right? It'll be proper. But the competition thing was odd for me. I didn't get it. Like, I understood the debate. Like, maybe it's a great American debate. It's not a great like Western debate, right? No one in Europe sits there discussing fucking burgers. We just discuss our smoking habits. But I didn't get. I came away from that advert thinking, what do I feel? And all I was sat there thinking was, oh, do I want a Five Guys? Might have that tomorrow. I didn't really see any value coming from Burger King. I didn't leave away thinking, oh, Burger King stands above the rest potentially because of their incredible ingredients, or it was just weird for me. And the idea that French people are friendly and talk to each other was absolute nonsense as well.
It is interesting because actually for me, anecdotally, if I read the words debate the best burger, Burger King is not there. You know, it's like I'm thinking of other places, certainly not Burger
Shake
King or
Shack.
McDonald's. No,
Oh,
not
Shake Shack.
either. They went way
Yes, Shake
downhill.
Shack.
No, way downhill as well. They sold out.
Balls.
Yeah. And it definitely, the best burger, I will say, definitely does not exist in the UK. It is 100% American. I know that to be a fact.
Yeah, but have you had Toad in the Hole? Right, you know.
No, can't sell me on that. Sorry. There is great food. There is great food in the UK, and you have amazing names for it. But the beef is better in America.
Toad in the Hole is not an appetizing name for a dish.
I don't eat things that sound like euphemisms.
Yeah.
Viren, our producer Viren, made a good note in the chat, which is, here we are, bunch of Western people debating burgers. So we're going to wrap up the show. I'm going to give everybody 1 minute on the clock to rant or rave about something that they love or hate. Let's keep it marketing related. We've talked about the food. We're going to move on from that. Chad, I'm going to start with you. What's your rant or rave for this week?
Oh, just generally?
Yeah, go for it.
Fuck. Do you know what? I don't know if you've done this before. I just can't stand the fucking guy. Brewdog. That World Cup ad. Oh, it's there's a couple of brands who I get it, right? We all want to be creative and jump on every bandwagon and try and be relevant in every conversation. It doesn't fucking work. And when it does, you just look desperate. And that's how I classify Brewdog's marketing now. Like, every time something in the world happens, they launch a fucking beer. Right? The worst thing in the world could happen next week, and he launches a beer, and the funds are going to go towards something. And I know maybe that's a nice thing, but nothing seems sincere about the guy. And look, I'm a proud Aberdonian. They're an Aberdeen company, born and bred. I went to their first little bar when they were tiny. I didn't really like all the bearded hipsters, but I lived with it. But yeah, it's an insincere brand. I feel like their marketing has become cheap. I think they used to stand for something which was sincere, which was like punks and communities, and they did really good job of harnessing that community. And then every time I speak to people who were like from Aberdeen, the original investors, they just feel like they sold out. So I just haven't said I don't like him in a couple of months, and I felt like I had to get it off my chest.
We've not talked about Brewdog, so that is a first. It's interesting though, because we do talk a lot about how, you know, a lot of challenger brands start as this niche, community-driven, purpose-driven thing, but how do you scale? How do you scale that type of niche relevance?
No, but it was just I never specified, I should have. It's like he was criticizing Qatar like everyone's doing right
Right.
now, and yet he was like selling his beer to Qatar, and he was showing the game to
Yeah.
all of his bars. So he was like saying one thing and doing the complete opposite, and that's like a recurring fucking revolving door with that guy. So
Yep.
yeah.
Dubos, what have you got?
Gosh, I'll probably follow on the World Cup. I think one of the things I think is quite interesting this week is all the different news around the outrage not really translating, the lack of viewing in a lot of countries. And I think, it is interesting because I think Brewdog, there's an insincerity to it, but I think it's intriguing that there's probably an insincerity to a lot of the discussion around the World Cup so far, where everyone was quite outraged, but then at the end of the day, we'll be quite happy to be sport washed anyway. And I think at a certain point, I think there are very few countries on earth. I think Germany was one of them, but some of that could be tied to the performance of the team at certain points where the viewing's down. And I think, as consumers at a certain point, as viewers of things, as just citizens of places that claim to be outraged by workers' rights and such, you've got to follow through at a certain point. And I think, what we're seeing with this World Cup is that at the end of the day, we can be outraged, but we're probably still all going to watch it. It's one of those things where if England hits the quarterfinals, I imagine workers' rights goes the way of it's coming home, and kind of flags painted on faces. So, I think as kind of viewers and sports fans and consumers, I think we've got to decide if we're outraged about something, what are we actually going to do about it?
Yep. Jenna?
I don't know if it's a rant or a rave, but I am really enjoying Elon Musk's Heart of Darkness style, like sort of like meltdown, like over the Twitter thing. I know that we've all been watching it for a little while, and it's like a little bit like old news at this point. But much like the GameStop super stonk drama that I do continue to follow, and it is my favorite internet like black hole of like weird conspiracy theories. I like the new writing on the Elon Twitter storyline on this. In particular, I'm really appreciative that he's about to enter the find out stage of fucking around with Apple and their content moderation policies. So that's really fun and enjoyable. And it is also kind of the interesting part about like both this and with the GameStop thing, where it's like in all these kind of like rants, it's really interesting being able to watch what happens with like messaging, where it's like they take small kernels of truth and like, reasonably good points. Like Elon's pretty good point about like Apple essentially takes a 30% tax on the internet by charging 30% of all transactions that go through the store. That's a good point. And then he just goes off the fucking rails into and they're like, destroying my free speech and all these other types of things. So I don't know if that's a rant or a rave, but it is really interesting to watch. I'm hoping that maybe that there's like some good outcomes out of it, and then the rest of it's going to be a train wreck. But I'm enjoying watching it. I'm enjoying watching it.
It's a rant rave, a rave rant. It's both together. There you go. All right, that's all the time that we have for today. Chad, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to see you and get your opinions on things. Always enjoyable and entertaining. All right, we will see you next week. Have a good day, everybody. Punchy is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with Jenna, Dubose, or myself, email us at media@wearerival.com or find us on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.